Hello everyone, today I am going to talk about the components of an abutment, types of bearings used, the placement of bearings and casting of pedestal. Let me talk about the different components of abutment. This structure here is called an abutment. An abutment is a structural element that transfers loads from a bridge to the ground or supporting structure. The arrow pointing at a wall is called a dirt wall and it functions to resist the horizontal forces acting on the structure. The horizontal force here includes the soil pressure exerting from the back of the dirt wall. This here is called the abutment cap. Abutment cap is used to carry the vertical and horizontal forces to the foundation. There are two types of bearings for the upstream side and the downstream side. For upstream side we used fixed bearing, and for the downstream side we used long guided bearing. Both fixed and long guided bearings are a type of pot bearing, as they both have pots to hold the components within. Both fixed and long guided have an elastomeric pad, but a long guided has a Teflon polymer above the elastomeric pad to displace the load longitudinally, hence the name long guided bearing. This here is a long guided bearing. If you look closely, you can see the length at which this bearing will displace at. These details are significant as it gives the distance to be maintained between the dirt wall and the bearing. If you zoom in, you can see the load carrying capacity and its wind resisting capacity. In fixed bearing there won't be any displacement, rather, there will be rotation. The bearings are placed such that one side of abutment holds a pair of long guided bearings, whereas the other side of abutment holds a pair of fixed bearings. All four of the bearings cannot be long guided bearing, as it may cause large displacement. All four also cannot be fixed bearing, as there will be no displacement and may fail during the earthquake. Hence, one abutment should have a pair of long guided bearings, whereas other abutment should have a pair of fixed bearings. The image here is a reinforcement cage of a pedestal at which the bearing will be placed. This kind of reinforcement is called the double mesh reinforcement. The diameter of the vertical rods are 16 millimeters, and stirrups of D are 10 millimeters at 75 millimeters, center to center spacing. The bearing is fitted into the reinforcement cage with help of anchor sleeves. The diameter of anchor sleeves is 32 millimeters. The bearing is designed in such a way that the concentric loading gets applied at the center of the bearing. All four of the bearings should lie at the center line of one another, and all should lie at an equal distance from the dirt wall. After ensuring that the bearings are placed with accurate measurements, preparation of formwork is done. Concrete grade of M40 is poured into the formwork to form the pedestal of dimension 450 millimeters by 450 millimeters. When pouring the concrete, only the anchor sleeves and not the entire bearing is placed into the reinforcement cage. After pouring the concrete and finishing with the thin layer of grout, the rest of the bearings components are fixed to the anchor sleeves. A 40 millimeters thick MS plate will be placed on top of the bearing, and on this plate, the bottom part of the girder will be placed. After the placement of bearing and casting of the pedestal is done, the pedestal is left for the curing effect to take place. The next step will be the placement of the bottom side of the girder on the pedestal, which will be done in the near future.